Recording's gonna start. And you guys are familiar with Zoom, so you know what's actually happening. And I would love to hear where our field trip participants are from. So if you want to just put in the chat where you're from, that also helps us track where people are coming into the classes from for Atlantic Institute to really have a gauge on that. Bowersville, Georgia, Williamsburg, Virginia. All right, East Coast. Welcome this evening. Maybe I'm the only one that's the international person here today, but I welcome you on behalf of Atlantic Institute. And while we're waiting to see if any others come in, let me do some of the other housekeeping and really tell you about the Atlantic Institute. Greenville, South Carolina, welcome. And hopefully you can see that. If at any point the visuals get off, somebody unmute and just say, hey, something's wrong. We can't see, we can't hear, because I've got lots of things to show you. But Atlantic Institute, the vision is wanting to live in peace, in a peaceful world where nonviolence, respect, understanding, friendship, cooperation, and love prevail. Like, what would it feel like if we were living in that kind of world? And so the mission of Atlantic Institute is about seeking and creating opportunities for dialogue between individuals and communities, contributing to the local and global peace by promoting values such as respect, acceptance, dialogue, love, richness of faith and culture over centuries of time. At Atlantic Institute, we approach our world with realistic optimism to build a better future for tomorrow. We believe that small positive actions can make significant changes in our lives and the world. And we choose to face the challenges of our world by offering solutions through dialogue and education, as well as organizing cultural activities and humanitarian work. And that's part of what this field trip today is about. It's about providing some cultural exposure to things that sometimes are familiar to us, sometimes they're not familiar to us, and that's what the sharing is today. So I am glad to be your field trip host today, and welcome. So where might we be going today? You probably already know because you signed up for this field trip. But let me get our slides going so that you can see with me where we are visiting today. One of the things that I found out in moving to Cuenca, Ecuador. I'm an American that has retired and immigrated to Ecuador, which is now my full-time home. And one of the things that I found out, maybe I knew this before I got here, but I definitely have been exposed to it since I was here. But many people know about Panama hats. Well, we're going to talk about Panama hats today. One of the first things that you'll find out is that Panama hats are not from Panama. I know that may be hard to believe because that name is so ingrained in what I know about hats. When I came down here, the first thing that my uncle wanted me to do was make sure I got him several Panama hats. For years, he's been talking about it. We had friends at the church that I grew up at that my uncle is still a member of, and he's from Panama. And my uncle's fascination with Panama hats started way back then. And part of me coming was him having his dream fulfilled of having his niece send him Panama hats from Ecuador once he found out that's where they were from. And so today, I'm going to take you on a tour to the Magic Hat Museum. The Magic Hat Museum is located in Cuenca, Ecuador. And Cuenca, Ecuador is in the mountains of Ecuador. We're at an elevation of a little over 8,000 feet, so we're way up near heaven. Just in case you wanted to know, up above where the clouds are, I believe that's where heaven is, and that's where this is. The nice thing about being up this high is that we're in a state of perpetual spring is what they call it. So it's spring year round, which I really enjoy. Cuenca is about 2 degrees south of the equator. So we experience lots of other balance in the way of life, and that our sunrise and sunset is the same year round within about a 30-minute window. And so that's exciting for me. The sun rises and sets right about the same time every day, year round. It's a really cool thing. And so here in Cuenca, Homero Ortega is one of the prominent names in the hat making industry. And I want to take you through the tour that I went on this week. This is a museum that is actually in a working factory. So when you go in, you see the work being done live in real time. And it's a wonderful experience. And so I'll share that with you. Now, what I've got to show you today is I'm going to take you through a slideshow and talk to you about some of the things that I saw. And then I have several video clips that I want to show you. One is viewing some of the many different styles of hats that are considered the toquilla straw hats. And I want you to put that vocabulary, put that word in your vocabulary. I'm trying to retrain myself to be able to pay homage to this heritage. The toquilla straw hats is the vocabulary that I'm working to relearn instead of Panama hats that totally ignore the culture, the rich culture that's still in place today. And so I'll be taking you through the slideshow and talking to you about some of the things that were on display in the museum. And then I have a few clips that were some of the people talking. And one of them very specifically, I'm going to play with the subtitles. Part of this is honoring the heritage. And you'll hear my broken Spanish, but it's effective communication because one of the ladies that is one of the workers and artists there, one of the finishers of these hats, guided me through and gave me some tidbits about the hats and the different styles and designs, and even took me into the special room with the very, very special hats, like price point that goes from Panama hats on the low end for everyday people would be around $25, but on the very high end, these hats that take 6 months to make are around $700 in comparison to price. So I'll be putting the subtitles on, and then some of the pictures will breeze through, but I will make available to everyone who signed up for the class the slideshow so that you at your leisure can go through some of the things that I may overlook or just gloss over. So enjoy, sit back, get your snacks, and enjoy the field trip with me. So here we go. As I told you before, Homero Ortega is one of the prominent names. And this particular picture that you see is one of the artifacts that's a part of the legacy here. I'm going to flip to where I can actually read the script because my eyes, let's see, maybe I can do this. The toquilla straw hat has deep ancestral roots. When the Spaniards disembarked centuries ago, they saw natives covering their heads with a strange woven article similar to the vampire wings. And if you look at this particular artifact, you'll see that kind of style where the wings go out to the side. In 1630, Francisco Delgado persuaded them to convert them into, I'm trying to get my screen to go forward, convert them into a more brimless hat, or toquillas. That's where the name comes from, which also is translated as like head wrap. And in 1796, Charles V promoted the creation of craft guilds, among them the Straw Hat Guild or the Toquilla Guild. This article is legacy and fusion of two cultures that have lasted until now. Now, one of the interesting things in these next couple of slides, you'll see some hats in very different colors and very different styles. And as I spoke with one of the ladies that works there, she was explaining to me that these particular hats are very custom work that are being exported to Europe. And so you'll see partial glimpses of them because these are very special and proprietary to those who have custom ordered these particular styles and colors and designs. Also, as you look here, this is again is another artifact, and you can see the brimless hat that was a part of this sculpture that's a part of the culture as well. And if you look at the top of that case, that is what the forms actually look like, that they actually mold those hats to. As you see, this is very customary that the people of today still wear traditional clothing and the traditional hats. This is a common sight. This is, as a matter of fact, at one of the artisan markets here in Cuenca. I believe that's Rotary Plaza, an area that I frequent quite often. And so the export company, Homero Ortega Limited, carries the ability of our people to distant latitudes. And through its museum, the magic of the straw hat, it renders homage to the women and men who with their skillful hands and natural artistic sensitivity interweave the future of this region. The craft activity of weaving straw has not been just a factor in the economic growth of the region for decades. In addition, it has become a lasting part of the identity of Azua province and expression of the creativity of the entire population. Where I currently live is Cuenca, and we are a part of the Azua province, or state would be a very a similar association for that. If you look in the picture, you can see this is a workshop. You can see these are finishers. And so they would be steaming, and you'll see some more pictures later, but they'd be steaming the brim or forming it to the forms. This is a 19th century, during the 19th century is where this became an export. That it was beyond just the confines of Ecuador. And this is one of the companies that was very instrumental in that work. This has been a cottage industry. These individuals would be community members in rural areas or even in city areas, and this is cottage work they do at home. And so these are ways for them to be able to earn revenue without them being disconnected from the family unit, which is something that I see very, very often here even today. Families, craft guilds were developed, and this became a way in not only the Azua and the Cañar areas, which is our adjoining province, but also in the other areas like Bibilian, Cañar, Daleg, Paute, Gualaceo, Sigsig, Sidke. These are all little regions or villages around this particular area. And so individuals, not just out of curiosity, but out of economics. This was a part of the way that the craft artisan industries helped to support families through that export business. As you see here, this is a picture from the archives. These are women that would have been crafting. They are doing some of the finishing work. There's a special technique that they use around the edge to keep that weaving from being, from unraveling. And so these would be things that they would be doing at home. They'd be making these at home on a, what we would consider a piecemeal contract. And so these are some of the photos of this work being done, and it's still being done in this same way today. The story of how we got to the Panama hat. In the 1890s, the first hat exports from Cuenca were made. They traipsed, at that time, there wasn't the highway system like we have it now, where it makes it a little bit easier to go from Cuenca to the coast in Guayaquil, but they took the route over the mountains into Guayaquil, which is a port city. And from there, the exports were sent out. Now, primarily, initially, these exports were going to some of the regions, but at the time, the Panama Canal was under construction. And there was a large demand for the toquilla straw hats because they were light and they were fresh. They were, breathable. The fibers made them light and breathable, and they became an indispensable, part of the work culture there, to be able to protect people from the hot sun. This is utilitarian artistry, which I find to be a common theme within the culture. That growing up for me, we had church clothes. There were special clothes and shoes. You had church shoes and church clothes, and when you came home from church, you put them away until the next week or the next time that you needed them. But what I find in this culture is that in their utilitarian tools, from the shawls that they use to tie the satchels on their back as they're carrying things into the market. They may be embroidered with sequins and bright colors. The clothing and the sashing, the skirts are, for one particular region, are like velvet, with intricate embroidery along the bottom of them that has some symbolism, depending on where they're from, in different styles. But that's an everyday infusion of functionality, but also beauty. And so even these hats and the intricacies of these hats, they're functional. That's where they started, but they have become not just functional, but beautiful pieces that other people enjoy, even if they're not out in the hot Caribbean sun. But as they were using these in Panama, during the construction of that, the hat became known as a Panama hat. There was confusion between the port of origin and the place of origin. So one of our American presidents was one of the people that called them that, and that is stuck. But toquilla straw hat is what these are called, and that pays homage to their heritage all the way back to Ecuador. And this would be just some of the scenery of them being outside and they're drying them. We'll talk about the processes a little bit later of bringing things into market. One of the things to note out is the architecture of Cuenca still is this old world architecture that has been preserved. And for me, that is part of the beauty of this community. You see men working as finishers there on the hats. This is a co-ed cottage industry. This here is Romero Ortega. This is who took this to a business level, and the legacy has been built on this. This business has 5 generations of history with hat makers, and part of their mission was to keep this culture alive. And so that is the Romero Ortega that was instrumental in the beginning of this work. He was born in 1916 and was part of how this business was created and then continued. I'm going to skip through and just show you these because some of the video clips will talk about this, but these are the fibers that are being used. As you can see on the bottom, I'm in a working factory where the museum is, and they have hats in various stages that are in the preparation process. So that's what you're seeing down below, hats that have not been trimmed and finished, but they have been bleached. And so you'll see them on the ground. And as you can see, this is a palm type leaf. As you can see him holding that leaf there on his shoulder. You see the groves of them. You'll see even the animal on the right side of that picture with the fibers strapped to that. You'll see on the lower left quadrant there, those fibers that they're taken and then separated. They're boiled, they're dried. You'll see them, again, in various stages and styles of hat making. But this is a community thing. One of the things that I wanted to point out as you look through some of these pictures is that every single hat has required community. These are individual artisans that do the crafting work, but oftentimes one person will begin the crafting work and someone else will finish it. Someone else will do the bleaching or the dyeing. Someone else will do the shaping. Someone else will do the finishing. And even as I was there, and you'll see in the video clip, Erica, she was preparing these and they were boxing these beautifully colorful hats off to Europe, but she's trimming the fibers by hand. And so this is by design work that requires community to be able to complete. And that for me just sits really well with my personal value system. These are some of the molds that they would use to be able to stretch them. And as you can see, there's a tourniquet that lets them open or close it to be able to size them as they're preparing that. This display shows you very much how the hats are made. When I was looking for hats for my uncle and my son, I could walk right up to the front of a very small shop where artisans throughout town were doing just that. It looks exactly the same. The way that they have been doing this for generations is the exact same way that they're still making them now. And so as you can see, the mannequin is demonstrating the pressing of the brim, but as you can also see, there's several hats in their less than finished stage, but you see one of the hats that's in the table where the crown is sunken below that so that he has access to that brim and is able to steam that brim as they begin the finishing work of that. And so you can just see the form, but the hat, that it is still done in this same traditional way. Some of the hats, some of the other utensils that are used in the process. And I'll send links out so that if you'd like to browse through these, you'll be able to see them. This was this production and this way of marketing the hats was really something that has preserved this legacy. Being able to coordinate the cottage industry and be able to open the market up broader. And so this has been a business that has been passed down through the generations of this particular family. And that was some of the things that I was able to see in this museum. Some of the photos that are literally of their family and children. As you see, this is a woman that's working, but her son is sitting right nearby. That's one of the things that for me is the richness of this culture where families are connected. That you will see artisans like this at home working and being able to tend to the needs of their family in between that work. This is, again, they have bleached these, and this is what it looks like before they've been pressed and shaped and styled. These are some of the styles that would be traditional when you think about Panama hats or torquilla straw hats. These would be some of the things that you may have seen in your own life on TV or just in general. It's a very popular style. These are some of the classic styles, but don't worry, they get much more intricate. And these hats start by working on the center. For anyone that crochets or does any kind of craft work like this, they start with the button in the middle and then work their way out to the edges. You can see the intricacies of this. And these are straws, like the closest that I can relate to would be Sweetwater grass. You see the Sweetwater baskets. It would be that kind of craft. And as I explained, some of the styles, again, all of these are handmade. These would be different color dyed fibers that are woven in, but even the intricacies of the design are a part of the weaving work. This one, just because I happen to be a crocheter, single crocheted with the intricacies that you see. Llama are a common animal here in this region. And this thrills me most because in my occupation, my vocation before retiring, I was a farmer and I happened to have owned a pair of llamas at one point in my farming career. So that just as a personal a thrill for me to be able to see that worked into the crocheted hat here. And then colors, the colors and the styles of the hats. This looks like what I'd do if I was working on a project with scrap yarn, all different colors that are put together. So it was thrilling for me to see that no matter what the types of fiber that you're using, that those same kind of principles go to work. This may have been intelligently thought of, but it looks like what I would do with leftover colors of all kinds to create a brand new, beautifully colorful creation. And that the traditional Panama hat that I think of when I think of Panama hats before my exposure to this rich culture here in Ecuador. And so that's the slideshow portion, but I want to share with you one of the video presentations or several clips of videos. And let me make sure that I turn on the closed captioning. There's one of them that will be in Spanish. And so I urge you to explore this culture more fully by doing the work of translating. Some of it you can follow along, and like I said, you'll hear my broken Spanish, but enjoy the rest of the show. These are some of those custom-made hats that are going to Europe. Everything, even the flowers, are custom weavings with the fiber. Beautiful selection of colors and styles.
How are you? There's
You'll
so
hear
many
my excitement.
beautiful colors, and even the flowers look like to be woven.
Yes, all are handmade here.
They're all made here.
Yes, from the store.
Would you mind talking on my camera?
Yes,
Okay,
of course.
tell me who you are.
Hi, welcome to our museum, Mamer Ortega. Here we are exporting some hats to Europe. So we have many styles, and also you can see in our showroom.
Very nice,
Yeah.
very nice.
Okay.
Is there anything different? Some of them have a large brim or a small brim. Is that just style?
Yes, it depends from which the customer asks. We have here hats from short brim and a large brim.
So it's just different styles of hats.
Yes.
And I've learned that Panama hats is what a lot of people call them, but that's inaccurate.
Yes.
What would be the proper term for calling them?
Yeah, the proper term is toquilla hats.
Toquilla
Toquilla
hats.
straw hats.
Toquilla straw hats would be
Yes,
proper.
handmade in Ecuador.
Handmade in
Yeah,
Ecuador.
here is the explanation of how why the name is Panama hat, but the right name is toquilla straw hats.
Toquilla straw hats. The colors I notice are just so vibrant and beautiful. Do
Yes.
they dye that straw before they weave them? Is that
Yes.
how that's accomplished?
Yes.
In the various
Some
colors.
of them we dye the straw first, and some of them we dye the hat when it's ready.
After it's ready.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Diana.
Diana. Thank you,
Yeah.
Diana.
Yeah.
The straw used to weave hats is from a plant native to Ecuador, which is similar to the palm and has unique qualities. It belongs to the family of Cyclanthaceae and was classified as Carludovica palmata in honor of Charles IV and his wife Maria Luisa, who promoted its botanical cataloging in America. Fan-shaped leaves grow at the end of its long stalks, which are cut while still shoots to be transformed into the raw material for weaving. The most important plantations are found in Manabí and Guayas provinces, as well as some areas of the Amazon basin. The plantations are tended with great care, and the vocation is passed from one generation to the next. From the shoots, tender leaves sprout that, when cooked and air-dried out of the sun's ray, curl up until they form thin, blonde, cylindrical fibers. The task requires great patience because the fiber's color and strength depend upon it.
You guys, I have my museum voice on. It's something about being in a museum where you all of a sudden talk quietly, so listen carefully. I'm so sorry about that. I was listening to the videos and realized that. But what I was saying was that they dry those fibers, and what they do is they kind of almost roll up into a cylinder. And that's what they're using in their weaving. And then this is a display that would be very typical of the front of rural home even today. And you'll see there's the frame mold and the hats and the straw hanging down there. That's the raw material. So various stages of the hat process. And this would again be home cottage industries.
The quality of the toquilla straw hat depends not only on the thickness of the raw material used, but also on the manual skill of the weaver. The customary workplace is the home, whether in the city or in rural areas. This activity established itself in the daily routine of the craft workers who passed it on to their spouses and children. The hat is a constant element to which each person dedicates the necessary time. Not only is it a source of income, it is a family legacy, a popular tradition, a part of oneself, of one's life.
And again, these are hats that have been bleached already and they're waiting for the next stage of processing.
Hat making is completely manual, with all its forms simplified by custom and skill of the craft workers. The first part to be woven is the pattern. Just a few straw fibers are employed in its initial creation, to which more are progressively added until a width is attained that varies between 5 to 10 centimeters. Then the crown is woven, employing a mold, which is a block of wood, to gradually produce the shape to the point where the brim begins, which is the final element of a hat of 7 to 15 centimeters. After that comes the remate, or the tying off, which consists of doing a special interweaving to finish this phase of the process.
And so you see some of them are dyed, some of them are not, depending on the style of the hat that they're using. And so they start from the center and work their way out to the brim using those forms.
The next stage in the creation of a hat is performed by women and is known as the azucada, or the tightening, which consists of tightening the tied-off fibers to keep the weave from coming undone, followed by clipping the excess fibers. Then the hat is washed, whitened, or bleached, or dyed, and dried in the sun. When it has lost its shape and looks like a bell, with precision and strength the craftsman's hands return it to the original shape. This stage is the compostura, or reshaping. The person who performs this activity are usually urban dwellers and work in the warm atmosphere of their home.
I just was going to add a comment
In
that
contrast to other crafts.
we here where I live in Georgia, we have a processing room we built, and we actually process deer during hunting season. It's like a side thing that we do when we at least have it for ourselves. And in the summer months when it's cool, I can keep produce and other things out there. But I can just tell you, that's like the monotonous work of that can really wear on you. And I think we did probably 20 deer last year. We did like 10 of ours, and then for others that we knew, because we have a wildlife permit, storage permit. So I'm just sitting here thinking of the monotonous, constant weaving of the salad. The monotonous weaving of the straw, like all those hats over and over again. Like I just know, like
huge cottage industry. The difference, I think, is that the pace of work here is very different. Pace of work is very different. You'll hear in one of the later clips where she talks about the very fancy hats, that because of the fineness, those workers would work about 2 hours a day on it. Just because of exactly what you're talking about, the tediousness. The finer the hat, the finer the fiber, the more tedious that intricate work is. But this is a community of crafters, of makers.
And I get like that. That's neat that they all work together, because I think when we go out there and process here, we're all working together. Like the kids are helping write out plastic bags, or they're helping do this or that. Like, get me something this, or help me with that. And I think it's cool how they do all that. And I'm just thinking about how I remember, like, how, like, you start it and you're like midway through, like, oh, I can't wait till this is done. Like
it's a stamina though you build up as a crocheter.
It's a stamp, right? Yeah, because
I can make blankets this big until finally I can make, a full size blanket. That patience and that resiliency is
and I'm just looking at all the hats going, oh boy, I mean, that just takes that's just that monotonous of that, but I know, like, everybody takes turns, and it's a social thing, so you can sit and chat with people, and you can sit, so I mean,
very different kind of business model. But if you look at the number of hats that are stacked up in some of the pictures in the background, it's amazing. It's amazing the amount.
Now I'm looking at these. I'm not a hat person, but I'm looking at these going, man, I want a hat, man.
Yeah, I want them all. I probably say that
in because, like, the work that goes into that, to think of it, to create it, to do it, like, I want a hat.
And this is what Atlantic Institute is about, being able to understand that. When you see a hat that's a $25 hat, and to realize it may be handmade, because for the local population, a handmade hat would be about $25, on the fancy end of $50. In US dollars, because that's the currency we use. For me, as a crafter, like, I know the amount of energy that goes into making a hat or a blanket. And so part of seeing this for me gave me such a greater, profound appreciation for the craftsmanship, the work, the hand-loving care that goes into every single hat. That for me was so fascinating.
Because now you look at this and you think, I don't want to go buy a cheap Walmart knockoff hat. Like, there's, like, these people put so much into it that it's like, and owning one is like sharing in part of their pride of the work that they do.
And here, artisan made goods, whether it be hats or furniture or you name it, are oftentimes more affordable than the manufactured items, because those are imported in. That for me aligns with my value system. It is economically supportive of artisan work. And
Yeah.
this community is filled with everything from seamstresses to upholsterers to furniture makers to jewelers to ceramic workers to hat makers and weavers of other things here from the fibers that are sustainably sourced from right here. So this is a value system. Like from now on, when I hear Panama hats, I'm going to translate it in my head Toquilla straw hats, handmade in Ecuador.
Right.
And that symbol of community that these hats have now taken on for me.
Yeah.
That this, for me, is another way to say this is what community looks like, having now understood a little bit more about the intricacies and the number of people in the process. All right, a few more clips and then we'll talk
In
about any
contrast to other
questions.
crafts, hat making put down roots and extended without major modification. Nowadays, for the most part, the weavers carry out their activities in rural areas and deliver hats in their first stage to the factories or to comisionados or the middlemen. The azocadoras and the reshapers usually live in urban areas of Cuenca and perform their tasks at home under a piecework agreement. In this way, hats enter and leave the factory for these specific processes. The company-craftsman relationship is multiple and lasting. The factory becomes the center to which each craft worker converges with his own hat-making specialty. The participation of several persons is implicit in the creation of a toquilla straw hat. It is a job that requires a combination of skills to obtain a product that is unique to the world.
The stacks of hats there in the other room. And I've got the sub captions on. This is their showroom, and I wanted to show you the vast diversity of hats. Nothing like I imagined when I see the traditional Panama hat that was the hat of my understanding. Different styles, different colors, different textures, different weaving or crocheting methods. Some of the hats are unisex, some are very specifically female styled. Even the flowers are woven and dyed. And again, every bit of this handmade, every bit of it. The headbands, some are painted. I got to look in on several of the ladies that were doing some of the craft work. You're seeing woven fibers and even some of the other accessories, but the painting is hand done. I watched some of the ladies doing that work. And those that look like pattern, those are multiple colored fibers that are interwoven into those patterns. Some of them very, very intricate. Every bit of that's fiber. Again, those are colored fibers woven into that star pattern. Very intricate. The dolls. The inserts on these purses are woven fibers as well. Some of these hats. And then one of the ladies that's one of the artists there is going to come and talk to me and guide us through and tell me a little bit about. Contemporary styles. That one's got a denim band on it. multicolored woven styles. Again, that intricate pattern. Those patterns are actually designed in like someone would make lace. Colors and trim. It's a sun visor hat.
¿Cómo está? Buenas tardes.
Bien, buenas tardes. Son many diferentes
Sí.
styles para colores y
Con crochet, el mismo material, pero
es
hecho en
crochet.
crochet. Sí.
Yo crochet, pero no crochet con fiber.
Con hilo. Con hilos del
Sí.
crochet, claro. Esto es hecho con.
Es
Mira,
un todo
esto
diferente.
es mitad crochet, mitad a mano.
Ajá, es woven.
Oh,
Diferente. Es un poco, es
tiene unos
diferente.
bordes. Es lo mismo, pero es más fino. Es solo a mano, pero es un material bastante fino, nada que ver.
Ajá.
Vea, muy, muy fino.
Sí, sí. Oh,
O qué sé yo. Ya acá tenemos más fino. Hay mucho más fino sobre todo.
todo diferente.
Muy diferente.
Sí. ¿Cuántos tiempo para preparar
Un sombrero básico,
un
solo
sombrero?
el tejido,
Ajá.
un sombrero básico,
Complete.
o sea, es el más grueso. No, no. Solo tejerlo es 2 días.
2 días.
Pero para hacerle blanco, por ejemplo,
Ajá.
el proceso dura más o menos un mes. Porque después de tejer el sombrero debe pasar por 8 procesos.
Okay.
Si es el
8
blanco,
procesos.
8 procesos.
Okay.
Y para hacer un sombrero blanco, el sombrero debe estar en unos tanques para blanquearse 15 días.
15 días
Sí.
para un blanco.
Un blanco.
Ah,
Bueno, no un blanco.
pues es todo.
Entran
Pero,
360 blancos
Ah,
en un tanque. Y solo para hacer blanco el sombrero es 15 días.
15
Entonces, por
días.
eso tomamos como referencia que desde que llega el sombrero aquí tejido, para que salga como producto final,
Yeah.
más o menos un mes. Si es blanco, sobre todo, sí un mes. Porque son muchos procesos que hay que hacer.
Yeah. Es bonito. Es es fina.
La fibra es muy, muy fina. Mire, podemos diferenciar, mire, una fibra grande, mientras más fino el sombrero,
Mismo fábrica.
misma fibra,
Ajá.
más fina, más dividida, más cortada.
Oh, es un diferente en la precio. Es
Claro.
un
Es que un
fina.
sombrero básico, por
Sí.
ejemplo, se teje en 2 días.
Sí,
Pero, por ejemplo, este sombrero, la gente teje en 6 meses, tejiendo
6 meses.
de 1 a 2 horas por día.
Ajá.
Teje poco tiempo en el día porque la fibra es tan delgada como el grosor de un cabello que se cansa los ojos y las manos. Ya este sombrero no tiene precio. Este cuesta $2.500. Este es un sombrero mucho, mucho más fino. Siempre las jefas han dicho, sombrero no tiene precio.
Ya no tejen así, Amanda.
Es un diferente.
Claro que
en la
tejen a mano,
expresión.
pero ya no hay muchas tejedoras que
Mismo
tejan sombreros
fíbrica.
tan finos.
Oh, yeah.
Todos los sombreros son tejidos. Y mire, son los clásicos que son unisex y vienen con diferentes decoraciones.
Diferentes colores en la fábrica.
Decoración. Mire, esto como el blue jean.
Ajá.
Como el blue jean. ¿Sí o no?
Ajá.
Muchos colores.
Ah.
Es increíble lo que se puede hacer con la paja toquilla.
Es artista.
And so I hope that you were able to catch some of what was being said, but she was saying that to do the knitting of the crown on those that were the larger fibers, about 2 days, and then they get it into the factory, and then it's about 15 to 30 days of process, the bleaching, and there's quite a few processes that go into that. But then we were in the special room. And she says that these fibers are as thin as your hair. And they usually only work because of the fineness and the strain on your eyes about 2 hours a day. And so as a result, it takes about 6 months for those at that end of the quality level to be made. And so she was showing me the different thicknesses of the fibers and the different qualities of the fibers. The ones at the low end looked real wonderful to me, but when I got to the other end, it was like fine linen. You know, it was so small and thin. And so it was just an experience to see and an appreciation. The plant they use, so this was a working plant. This is like, you heard in one of the videos, almost like this is the middleman. This is the place in the middle. So individuals would bring their hats to the factory for then the processes to be done. And they do that production there and the finishing work there and the export. And so the cottage industry would be like piecemeal work. And so they would get paid by the work that they do, and they'd bring it, and this is who would finish the process for them and then export it to the wider audience. But as you can see, every single one of these hats is done by hand. As I was in that first room and talking to Diane, there were boxes, and they were bright red and turquoise and yellow, and just spring colors must be what it is. And it's Easter time. As I was thinking through it, it was like, these are just such brilliant colors. And it was like spring. And they were literally packing boxes as I was there, because this museum is right there in the midst of this factory. So I got to see in real life, like those hats you saw on the floor, they literally are hats that have come out of the process, and they're waiting for the next stage of the process. Now, there will be local artisans from this community that will come pick those hats up and take them to their individual workshops, be it at their home or if they've got a little storefront workshop, and do that finishing work. And so this middleman is the in and out, where these hats will go in and out as they finish the process. They'll be handed off from the original crafter to the next person who does the bleaching or the dyeing. And then from there, they'll go back out to another artisan who will do some of that finishing work. And then they'll come back into the workshop. And as what I didn't show was Diane was sitting there, and she was trimming the inside of that brim to make sure that those fibers, none of those fibers were out, that would stick you or feel not smooth. Those brims feel smooth like linen. It's a very smooth texture where they have, best I can associate, pressed those fibers down. So those fibers are compacted and nice and slick and smooth. And it was just a wonderful experience to be able to really gain a greater appreciation for these old ways that someone has seen fit to maintain in a cultural kind of way. The rich cultural heritage. As you saw some of the pictures, you saw ladies in some of the indigenous clothing. That's still what they wear on a regular basis. That this is a community where it's the old and the new that seem to work well together. And that for me is a richness that this move for me has added to my life, of being able to see how the respect for the old pairs with the modernity of, we got a light rail that you can take for 35 cents in town that runs, electric light rail that weaves through, but that you also can see this openly in the marketplace. My mercado, when I first realized that they actually do crocheting, I was at my weekend market, which would be like, your weekend farmer's market. We have one that's near my house that I go to many Saturdays. And I was so thrilled one day to walk up, because I recognized crocheting, and I saw them crocheting those fibers, and I went, huh? And she says, that for me, I can identify. I use yarn, but I thought, girl, you see those fibers, you see people buy them. I see people walking down the street with them, and now I understand this is their cottage business more than likely, but I just go to where they get them from. I can ask where they get them from, and maybe me too can crochet a couple of hats or two. Technically, it would be a toquilla hat, handmade in Ecuador. Like, I could get in on this. So I'm really excited about this. This really thrilled me. And so that is my presentation and sharing with you today. And if there's questions, there were a few that I answered in the chat, but feel free to unmute, or if you'd like to come on cam, come do that. And if there's any questions about this field trip, I am more than excited to answer them, or tell you I don't know if I don't have an answer. But thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much. That was very, very cool to learn about. So I think Georgina's question was like, did the plants that they use to make the fibers from, do they grow them commercially now?
So they have plantations. We call that here. It doesn't have this, even though there is the history of slavery, it's not the same thing. We have banana plantations and cacao plantations. And so these fibers would be grown just like that. And as you saw, I mean, the animals carting them out, and you see them with vats and big pots that they're boiling them in. Like, some of those processes are still followed today. Like, these are things that are still done in many of the traditional ways. We're talking low tech. This is a real low tech. Now, the plants, of course, they have big vats and equipment like that allows them to do that. These things stay submerged in the bleaching solution. And so some of those are mechanized in a way that lets them do the volume that they're doing. But if you understand how many hats are moving, individuals are making these. Back then, decades ago, we're approaching 100 years ago, but they had 250,000 craftsmen working. I don't know what those numbers are now. It may be something I go and find out about. But back then, it was a huge economics. This was one of the main exports during that time when the Panama Canal was being built, and the early 1900s. This was one of the main exports of Ecuador. So if you think of that scale and the expansion of it now, because it's not just utilitarian, but it's also fashionable, then I can only imagine how many people are a part of this cottage industry just for the production. This is a different company than I bought my uncle's hats from, but it's the same exact process that's being done to make these traditional wares. So it was really a cool thing. Yeah. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts? What did this spark for you? Any new realizations for you? How has this helped open up your understanding of this particular culture and the toquilla straw hats, oftentimes referred to as Panama hats? Any questions, any thoughts?
Yes, I'm wondering if, I guess Ecuador probably exports quite a bit of hats, because like Karen Lieberman here said she met a woman wearing an exquisite yet refined hat last year, and she said that it was handmade in Ecuador. So I'm guessing that they must export a lot of hats. That must be
absolutely. Those colored hats you saw were going to Europe, but this particular company is one of the big exporters. I checked it out just to see. I went on Amazon to see if there were Homero Ortega hats, and they absolutely were.
Yeah.
Part of your understanding now is if you were to purchase a toquilla straw hat from Ecuador, chances are it's handmade.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Karen said, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So this is just one of the rich parts of the tradition that companies like this, families like this, have seen fit to preserve that heritage in many of the ways that it was done 100 and even beyond years before that, back to the 1700s, where this particular style of hat became popular during that time.
Very, yeah.
Well, it has been a joy to take you all with me on today's field trip. If this were I feel like someone's grandmother, because I am. My official grandmother name is Grandma Blanket. So thank you for coming with Grandma Blanket on another wonderful adventure around Cuenca, Ecuador. Welcome to South America. If this is your first time to South America, I want to welcome you personally to Cuenca, the city of perpetual spring. Thank you, Atlantic Institute, for continuing to maintain this platform, and Christine for being that support, just in case the technology works, my skill set runs out. But to be able to offer me and the others an opportunity. If you have not explored further the opportunities with Atlantic Institute, please go to the website. There are cultural creations and classes of all kind for you to join into. They are free. We do give you an option for making a donation that helps offset some of the administrative costs and the Zoom platform and some of those kinds of things. But we welcome you to share. Next time you see an activity or definitely a field trip with Lorana, sign up. Let's see. Next up upcoming field
Karen?
trips. We're going to do a part 2 on technology.
Yes, Karen, if you do visit Ecuador, you need to make sure you connect with Lorana, and she can show you around. She has
Absolutely.
people visiting all the time.
Yes, I have a healing center here, so I have lodging and space. And when we're not doing retreats, you can rent that out too. But come along, and by all means, if you make it to Ecuador, look me up. I'll be somewhere playing
I
in
like
Ecuador.
Georgina says, can't wait for the next. Thank you, Granny.
Yes, yes, Grandma Blanket is on
We're gonna
it.
just
She
say
is on it.
Adventures with Grandma Blanket.
Yeah, so we'll be doing, we're working to get a firm date for the part 2 of the genealogy series. We did a genealogy series in January. What else is coming up? Lots of stuff. There'll probably be something related to chocolate, because chocolate and straw hats and roses are some of the things that are centered here. But stay tuned. There's a wonderful calendar of events on the Atlantic Institute website. We thank you all for coming and being a part of this sharing. We hope that you will take this information. If this has excited you, watch for the YouTube of the replay and share it. Share it with your friends so that they too know that there's all kind of great things happening with Atlantic Institute. Thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to come off and say your goodbyes, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, we are done with the field trip. You can now go have your snacks and take your nap or bedtime.
I'm gonna go eat, shower, and get to bed. All right.
Right,
Thank you very
right.
much, Lorana. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank you all.
quite welcome.
Feel free to unmute if you'd like and say goodnight and say goodbye.
And I'm going to do a little bit of administrative work before I close the room out so that I can make sure I have all of my ducks in a row.
So sometimes if people don't leave right away, you can click on them and put them back in a waiting room. You know, like if you want to sit here and do stuff or want to talk one-on-one with somebody, if they're sitting there waiting and some people just have their thing open because they were listening to it or something. And I've actually clicked those 3 dots and I put them back in a waiting room just to get them out of my space. So,
righty,
so you know.
and I'm going to, let's see, stop sharing.
All right,
And I will be ending this recording.